question about how you define or characterize location intelligence or location analytics. People throw the term around all the time, but if you were talking to someone on the street, how would you define location intelligence? What does it mean to the average person?
To me, it's more than just the dashboarding and visualizing. How do you drive business or analytical insight from real-time information or location-based information? I think that's in essence the goal we're trying to get at. And how do you get what's driving the value, whether it's from a premiums perspective, what's driving the risk control and concentration aspects, and what's driving the operational efficiency. If you can drive insights in those three areas based on location, that's to me is the definition of location analytics and intelligence.
Right. I mean, good analytics has always been about developing actionable insight. Right. So it's a question of figuring out how to use that location information in a way that drives whatever decision making you're trying to influence, right, whether it's pricing or fraud or and so I think it's just an emerging set of techniques to do that.
I can definitely echo that, but yeah, surprise. I would say that location intelligence is about using the spatial component, both the location but also the time, to do detailed and sophisticated analysis. So if we take the first aspect, location, today we know where the locations are in terms of geographic coordinates, what we call geo-coding. And the second part, the second aspect, the intelligence, the analytics, is around taking that information, do sophisticated models around it, transform it into insight, and eventually making better decisions.
Doug had touched on a point about the how location was used perhaps in the old days. And certainly location has been used as a component in insurance underwriting for many years, for decades. I wanted to ask a question about perhaps the weaknesses in the past approaches to using location. Several people have remarked that insurance companies relied on broad postal codes or broad parameters, and they may not have been as exact. Can people talk a little bit about some of the limitations of past approaches and maybe where we're going in the future? So let's talk first about limitations of past approaches.
In the past, using postal codes, because you take the difference in you go downtown Toronto and you can have one building that has 4 or 5 postal codes.
Right.
You go into a rural area and you have a whole town that's one postal code. So getting down to any degree of accuracy around that is a huge challenge. It's a primary tool. Yeah.
Using postal codes or FSA territories, you almost have to treat the entire territory as if it's all the same, because there's no other data to kind of differentiate different points within that FSA. So by being able to get rid of the traditional postal address and replace it with latitude, longitude, elevations, you can now make different decisions based on where you are. It doesn't. There's no more boundaries of that FSA code. It's all about where are you, and then in relations to anything else, and you can make a proper or more precise decision about whatever it is that you're looking at, and you're not sort of bounded by that FSA territory.
It does raise other challenges of how you're bucketing groups of latitude and longitude or segmentation in order to make kind of predictive categorization decisions.
Correct, but there are smoothing techniques today that can help you, can support you in doing that. But I mean, to echo your points, yes, a lot of phenomena, events happen on a more granular level than postcode. So think about the flooding or earthquake. I mean, they don't stop at the postcode boundary, unfortunately. So yeah. So location intelligence gives us this possibility to examine this on a much more granular and detailed level than before.
One of our specialties is terrorist insurance, and the underwriters that we deal with, they book based on postal code. But it was just interesting, the term when you say postal code. So in our rating formula, and our accumulation formula, it says a certain amount of money by postal code. So I called the guy in London and I said, well, what do you mean by postal code? And so I gave him the 6 numbers, and I said, do you mean like K4G, or do you mean K4G9? You know, like, is it this specific? And as Dale had mentioned, that could be, one building, could be 25 buildings in that particular thing. So it isn't really even, I have a good friend of mine who's at the post office, and I asked him, I said, when I was doing this, I said, well, how is it the post office Now, I can't say this is the official post office position, but how do they determine like these different postal codes? And he said that it started off, his opinion was at the start of this, how far a carrier could go till 11:30 or whatever, you know?
Makes sense.
I don't mean by, you know, but no, that's what, the postal code was, how much mail could he deliver? And then
Makes
that's
sense.
the 49L, and then the next one was 4L, 2, you know? And so it really isn't based on what we would consider to be what we're looking at now.
Now we're getting rid of mail carriers, so that where it basically is a redundant mode of measurement.
Yeah,
basically,
exactly,
right?
that's the point.
The our insurance companies, they're aware of this, but how much of a challenge is it to get a more granular or precise measurement geographically? How big is that challenge? How hard is that to do?
It's a big challenge for several reasons. Firstly, I would say insurance companies has not been, historically they have been quite slow in adopting new technologies, and some companies are suffering by that, having out of date systems, out of date tools. But I would say that I sense that at top management level, people begin to realize the benefits of these advanced methods, these advanced tools. So we're getting there, but it's a challenge, definitely.
Yeah, so I guess integration into legacy systems is a challenge that I think we all face, or all insurance carriers face. So as you start to introduce these tools on a national basis for the larger carriers, you have to ensure that there's a good and consistent level of accuracy in the data to be able to implement a process that is nationally that's sort of unified, and it can't be a small pocket here. If it's a set of data that's good for Eastern Canada, but they have no data for Western Canada, well, now you're sort of in this position where you have to start looking for different sets of data, different carriers, or you're not necessarily integrating the same logic. And so to find one good set of data that you can use nationally when you're talking about millions of customers, and to make the kind of big data decisions and analysis we need to do, that's, I think, one of the challenges.
I agree. It's not a tool technology issue. It's a data quality, consistency, and completeness issue. So that you can source that and then start to use it in whatever creative ways. And I think getting the frontline collection to happen, or in ways of acquiring and purchasing and integrating third-party data sets to supplement and get that level of granularity. I think those are the challenges that are being looked at right now.
Any more thoughts on the challenges? We're going to start moving into some more specific areas of
The data
location.
itself tends to remain fragmented, and it's not easily shared, but there's likely two layers. One is internal to the company, and then it even gets worse when you start talking external sources, like social media, anything like that.
Right.
And finding that right correlation, what are you going to marry that data together based on? Because you can get totally wrong decisions if you don't relate to data properly. So in that, yeah.